So thank you for joining me today. I greatly appreciate you spending some time with me talking about mental health. So let's tell our viewers, let's start off with, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? What do I do? Good question. I am an actor full-time right now. And I started that career basically 18 months ago. I made my first feature film last year, and it's going to be released at the end of July, called Legacy of Lies. It's a blockbuster spy thriller, and I star in that. I was one of the investors in that and one of the producers. So that's what I do now, but I didn't always do that. So when I was 2 years old, to give you some backstory, my mum left my dad. He was a gambler. He spent all the money, so she couldn't stay there. She was 23 at the time. So she went to live with her mum and a stepfather. And it was a very cold winter's night. It was snowing. I was 2. She was young as well. And the stepfather had been sexually abusing my mum for many years, but I didn't know that then. In fact, I didn't know that until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult for her to go back to that environment, but she had no choice. And he said at the doorstep to my grandma, it's either me or them. And my grandma said he can't stay. So we slept in the park that night. We nearly died. We were there a few nights. We were taken in eventually, and we spent quite a few years on and off being homeless. My mum wasn't really educated, so she was doing kind of casual work. And then she remarried another guy who ended up being my stepdad, but he was bipolar. And bipolar in those days, in the 70s, you didn't really understand. It wasn't really around that terminology.
Yeah.
But to cut a long story short, he was very nice, very affable when he was around people, but on the inside of the house, he was very violent, and there was a lot of domestic abuse. I ran away from home a lot. I tried to protect mum at 8 years old. There's not a lot you can do though with that. So my background, I kind of didn't really go to school. When I was at school, I was looking out the window daydreaming. And my background in terms of mental health as a child was very scarred and very traumatic. But, you know, I learned to kind of get through that in a survival mode and just take each day as it came.
Yeah.
So to me, when I left home at 15, when she left him, and she went to be with a new partner, she's still with, by the way, he's a great guy. But there was no room for me, and I had to go somewhere, and I didn't want to stay at my stepdad, so I just ran away. And I slept in the park, I slept in people's garages, people's cars, whatever I could find, really, because that to me wasn't really painful. That was an escape. So that's really how I dealt with that. And a lot of the time when I was a child, I really lived in my imagination. I didn't really operate
Yeah.
on the outside very well because there was so much going on inside that every day I had to escape somewhere. The only way I could escape was internally. I couldn't go outside. So that was my background as a kid. And then by the time I got to 21, I got into direct sales, and I eventually learned the hard way to sell things, because that was going to put food in my mouth. So I learned through desperation, and that became something I figured out. And then I learned to be inspired, which came a lot later, and I became very successful after that. And when I was 25, I got married, and then 27, I got offered a job in Malaysia to run a public company because I was well known around the world. Then I broke the world sales record at 26.
Amazing.
In my industry. And then a 6-month-old kid. Went to Malaysia. It was amazing. Stayed there for 3 years running this company. And then at 29, I had a heart attack.
Wow.
So literally, I was working so hard because my background was, if I don't work hard, I'm not going to survive. So it was like I was on the kind of like the wheel, the rat's wheel, you know. And I was making a lot of money. Thought, well, if it stops, it's all going to go, kind of thing. So I had a very, very much a scarcity mindset, even though I was successful. And I worked so hard, 18 hours a day, that one day I collapsed in the office, taken to hospital, and the doctor said, "You've got to slow down." And then a month later, I found out my wife was having an affair with my best friend.
Wow.
Which was more painful than the heart attack, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Because I'd known them both a long time, over 10 years. So that was like a double betrayal. And that was a very difficult thing to deal with mentally, because I felt that I wasn't worth anything because she chose someone else and he chose someone else. and I felt worthless, you
Yeah.
know. So that was hard. They're very hard to deal with. And then I lost all my money on the stock market 3 months later. Um, and then I came to a stage where, you know what, that was a pivotal moment, because I decided that at that point, nobody was going to control my life. I had to control it. So I didn't want to have a boss anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't want my partner to determine my fate in terms of, you know, she prefers someone else. So eventually, the biggest mistake I went was going back to my wife. That was a mistake. But I went back because I wanted to protect my kids, because I didn't want my kids not to have a dad like I didn't.
Yeah.
So that happened, and I stayed in that relationship as really for the kids. It wasn't an emotional relationship anymore. It wasn't loving like it used to be. And I stayed, and it was really difficult to deal with. And then in 2008, I left my wife, which was the best day of my life, because um, at 40 years old, I think that was the first day that I was truly happy
Yeah.
in terms of fulfillment, because I knew I was kind of like happy, because I knew I was worth something. And secondly, I actually wrote a book that became a #1 bestseller. So that gave me a lot of my self-esteem was through the roof.
Yeah.
So other people would give me validation, like, Marco, your work's amazing. You know, what you're doing is amazing. So because of that validation around me, that lifted me out of a very dark space, and carried me through to the next chapter, really. And that time in my life was probably the happiest and most fulfilled, because I felt I was worth something to society, to the world. I was contributing to a better place for a lot of other people as well, and I was inspiring other people.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. And then I became more successful. I opened a few businesses. I opened a restaurant, got into property. I was still in Malaysia then, by the way. And then in 2017, Channel 4 TV approached me in the UK and asked me if I'd like to give a house away on TV to address the social housing issue, which was rife, of course. You know, many people homeless, etc., couldn't afford, no affordability to buy the first house. I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So we made a TV show called Get a House for Free, and I gave 3 houses away to 3 homeless families, which is an amazing experience. And that kind of it kind of completed my life cycle. And when I made that show, my life, I knew what the purpose of my life was. It was like, oh my God, now I know why I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
here to help people that didn't have um, that didn't have what I had now, that were in the same position as me, but there's no one else around to help them, kind of thing. So that was really a breakthrough for me. And then a year later, I had some bad news. My family embezzled lots of money from me. I had to sue them. It's a long story cut short, but that's only just coming to an end right now. And that was extremely difficult to deal with, because my own family, who I'd known a long time, went against me and lied and cheated and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of mental health, I can probably tell you many aspects where I felt at my lowest ebb.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would say that twice I nearly killed myself. I tried to kill myself because I didn't feel I thought it was pointless to continue. So I've been at the lowest points. But at the end of the day, I've always managed to drag myself out of that. And what I learned from it is invaluable, you know?
Yeah.
So that's my answer to that question. Sorry, it's a long answer.
No, that's absolutely fine. You've obviously had an amazing experience through doing what's right for you, and everything that you've wanted to do has obviously become a success, which, you know, is amazing to hear. But I want to go back to when you said the day you found out your wife was having an affair with your best friend.
Yes.
How did you find out?
Well, what happened was I was in Malaysia and I actually brought him over to work with me, and he was there for 6 months. And there was other friends that were close to me, one in particular, that kept telling me, Marco, there's something going on between your wife and this guy. I don't trust him. But I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to believe it, because I couldn't even contemplate or conceive that they would ever do that to me. So I kind of dismissed it. I completely shut it out of a possibility that might happen. And then one day I went in the house and I overheard her on the phone calling his name and saying, I love you and all this kind of stuff. That's how I found out.
And when you walked in and heard that, what was going through your mind at the time?
Well, the first thing that was going through my mind was disbelief. The second thing that went through my mind was, how can I be such a fool to not really know what was going on? And when it happened, it was like an avalanche of realization came to me. Oh my God, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
All these dots, kind of uncertainties along the way, what's she doing, where is, they all kind of made sense to me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was devastating because finally I was sure that it was definitely truth.
Yeah.
And I literally packed my bags and left that day. So yeah, that was a horrible day.
And what did you do to kind of distance yourself from that emotionally?
Well, the first thing I did was leave that environment. And that was difficult because I had 2 kids as well. It's so difficult when you've got children involved because, I mean, they were very young though. I mean, my daughter was 3, my son was 1. And whatever you say to them, you cannot explain that to them. They
Yeah.
don't understand at that age. So my first gut instinct was just to leave out and of that environment, not to be reminded of her. Now I stayed with a friend, and I stayed with another friend that actually was very good for me at the time because they helped me get through that. And I was very fragile. I was very vulnerable, is the right word I was looking for. And what I did to get through that, I don't really know, to be honest, Oliver. I think I didn't know how to get through that because I'd never been through that. It's
Yeah.
something I wasn't expecting. And it had to, the hardest thing is dealing with the betrayal. Because I thought I could trust 2 people. I'd known them 10 years each. And they completely put me in a position where I couldn't really trust anyone ever again.
Yeah.
So what I did is I closed off my willingness to trust other people. I was very guarded, and I always kept things very businesslike, never emotional.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't interested in seeing another girl. I didn't want another relationship because if I thought about another relationship, I thought, well, if that's happened to me once, it could happen again. And I didn't want to be hurt. So I was trying to layer a protection on me to not get that hurt again, because that was probably the worst I'd ever felt.
Yeah. When Channel 4 approached you,
Yeah.
and obviously was asked to give away property for free to someone that was in your position in
Yeah.
upbringing, did you feel, was it quite emotional?
It wasn't at first because the production was very intense, and it was a lot of locations and a lot of talking and stuff like that. The day of giving the house away was emotional, but I didn't realize it at first because the day of the filming, actually giving the house away, I wasn't feeling so good. I actually had a big cold. I had a runny nose. And in fact, I even told production at the location, I said, listen, I can't film today. I couldn't even speak properly. I can't really say what I need to say in the shooting. And they went to get me some medication, all that kind of thing. And as I was walking around the location outside the house, there was a woman there I'd never seen before. And I asked production, who's that woman? And they said, well, that's the psychologist. I said, what do you mean psychologist? Well, they said, the psychologist is here to counsel the person you're giving the house to, because they're not going to expect it, and they're not going to know what to do in terms of behavior. I said, no shit. They said, yeah, shit. That's what she's here for. And then the psychologist came up to me and approached me and said, Mr. Robinson, you don't have flu. You don't have a cold. You're having an emotional reaction to an unresolved childhood issue.
Yeah.
I said, no way. She said, yes way. And I'm like, really? She said, yeah, really. So anyway, I didn't think anything else of that. We managed to get to do the shoot and go inside. And the moment I gave that house away, I cried for the first time in probably 40 years. And I didn't stop crying for 3 days. I cried for 3 days non-stop.
So did you feel like that was because you know what it would have been like to be in that position?
It was that, but it was also, it was like I was healing,
Yeah.
because I'd been keeping all that pain inside of me and thinking some of it was actually my fault, that my mum had to protect me. So I felt guilty. And when I gave that house away, that guilt left me. And I realized that it wasn't good to keep that guilt feeling in. But because I'd hidden it so far underneath me, I couldn't find ways to get rid of it. So it was always a narrative in my life. And perhaps that's why, in a way, my marriage failed, because I wasn't able to open up emotionally fully in my relationships. And I think that was partly to do with it. Although I wouldn't say she did what she did because I couldn't access my feelings, because I'm a pretty, affable kind of person.
Yeah.
I'm very open. But I think it was a contributing factor in terms of me having closer relationships with people through my life. So when I was able to access that guilt and identify it and come to terms with it, because it was such a huge scar, I was able to peel off the layers and be in touch with my vulnerability,
Yeah.
and realize that actually that was the most powerful thing I had. And when I released that was probably the most incredible feeling I've had, because it gave me also a sense of purpose, like I mentioned before. It gave me a sense of purpose, that I do mean something, I do make a difference, and I can, help people. And
Yeah.
that was a huge shift, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you was at your lowest point, did obviously you said you removed yourself from the situation. Did you ever speak to anyone about how you was feeling, or about what had happened at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I stayed with my other best friend, and I talked to him about it, and he got me through it. But I didn't really, I talked to like friends. I didn't really talk to my mum, because I didn't think it was appropriate to me to. I didn't feel enough connected to my mum to be able to speak like that to her.
Yeah.
Although it was funny feeling, because although I'm close to my mum, I've never ever opened up to her about how I felt as a kid, because I didn't want her to feel guilty that it was her fault. So I kept that in. So there was a lot going on. But yeah, when I spoke to my close friends and I resolved it, I came to terms with that, and slowly, um, I managed to get through it. But I wouldn't say I had the best therapy. I mean, if I could go back in time, I would definitely have had a therapist,
Yeah.
because I would have loved to have spoken to someone who was professional, that can actually understand what I was going through, because friends are great, but they don't really understand what's beneath the surface,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask anyone, would they do anything differently in their lives, everyone would say yes, right? Um, I'd do a lot of things differently. I mean, I'd choose who I invested my time in more carefully. That's for sure. I would be more open than I used to be. And I think if I'd been more open and talked about my childhood and pain, I think that would have actually healed me a lot better, and I would have been closer to relationships.
Yeah.
I said I would have definitely had help. I would have got help. But, at that time, I didn't really think, I had a belief that if I went for help, that I was weak. I was like a man's man. No, I don't need any help. I get it through myself.
Yeah.
So I thought that if I went for help from a therapist, that would make me seem like kind of crazy or weak and stuff like that. So I would have changed all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. When you felt at your lowest point and you kind of went into like a hibernation of emotions,
Yeah.
people at home that are in that position, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to speak to someone who's been through exactly the same as they have. And I think that's what's missing in society. Those people are not accessible as they should be.
Yeah.
There's too many layers of NHS, psychologist, but there's nothing in between that. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't really say, you can't go and, well, can I speak to someone who's just had a double betrayal in a relationship, please?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's more accessible now because of Google and the internet, stuff like that. But that will be the first thing. See, nobody understands you unless they've been in your shoes.
Yeah.
And I keep saying this.
Right.
Yeah, they have to understand.
Yeah.
Because if they don't understand you, it's very frustrating for me to explain that because they've not been in that situation.
Yeah.
And, when I talk to people like, well, my wife, what she did with my best friend, people go, oh my God, they can't even contemplate that ever would happen in their life. And they said, well, I wouldn't know how to deal with that. And you don't, you're not equipped to deal with that.
Yeah. So every time you did something in your life and it become a success, and I can only assume it was adrenaline that you had. You was living your best life. Did you ever feel like you'd have a relapse in a way and kind of have a really negative moment so close to that time?
I think I went out to prove to myself that I could be successful, and I did that. And my driver is that I was such a loser and such a losing life as a kid. So I had a desperation to prove myself.
Yeah.
At all costs. Meaning that it wasn't necessarily the healthiest thing to do in the way I did it, because it was running away from something rather than running towards something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was running away from family. I was running away from connection. I was running away from spirituality. I was running away from love, I guess, because I knew if I went into that arena where I would be in love, I had a feeling it would fail.
Yeah.
So, and it came true that it did fail. Although that might not be the reasons, I wouldn't say that was the reason, but I would say that I was certainly afraid of falling in love every time, really, because of what I've been through before. Every relationship my mum had fell apart, and it was very painful to watch as a kid. Because when I watched that, I thought, "Fuck, that is not cool."
Yeah.
So I had a lot of I saw a pattern where a relationship is not necessarily a good thing; it's a bad thing. So I kind of ran away from that a bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So since obviously, as you've just said, running away from love and emotion, did you struggle to then, obviously with everything happening with your wife, did you then struggle to find another relationship and build that trust with someone else?
Well, they say the greatest healer is time. And I can say to anyone listening to this, watching this video, that time is absolutely the only way you're going to heal it. So time was the huge factor in that. And also, what happened is during the latest years of my marriage, I met another girl, and her name was Sherry. And she was in Taiwan, and literally, she was an amazing girl because she was there as a friend and she became a lover, and she understood me. And she made me really happy because she made me feel like I was a man again, that I was worthy, and
Yeah.
that I could attract women, So that was also great therapy because, during that marriage, I didn't go out and look for a girlfriend because I was afraid that it would, fail again. I met this girl by accident. I was on a job and we got on really well, and it became a relationship, and it was a very wonderful thing. And actually, I still know that girl. We're still friends, and she's still very healing for me. And I would say to anyone, don't label a relationship as a boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife. there are many relationships you can have in your life that are meant to be there, because I believe that um, if you're looking for something, you're going to find it, or a person that's going to give it to you, but also they're going to get something from it as well. So I believe I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that there's causation and there's consequences, and there's an attraction. When you set out your mind, you want something, you'll actually get what you want. And I've always, since I've believed that and used it, it's always worked for me.
Yeah.
So she was great therapy. Time was great therapy. And then I wrote my book. That was another great thing I did. And that took me, a couple of years to do it. And when that came out, it was successful. That gave me more validation, but it also gave me therapy that if I worked on something slowly and worked very hard, it would get a better result rather than doing it quick. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
So when you was writing your book, did you feel more emotion was coming through that?
Yeah, because I used that as an escape. I was in a very unhappy marriage. So I would get up at 5 a.m, I'd write and go to do 3 jobs that I had to support my family. And I did that to really give me therapy, because I didn't want to, I knew that the marriage had gone too far to repair it. So I knew that it wasn't worth my time to repair that marriage. I wanted different things. She wanted different things. So for me, doing that, writing that book was my way out to find happiness.
Yeah. I think you've had a lot of experiences in life, and you've, from what I see, you've always tried to make and find a positive
Yeah.
and live the life that you want.
Yeah, and I think, that's the takeaway really. What I've learned from all those experiences is that no one is going to help you resolve what's inside of you. You've got to take responsibility. Your outcome is down to you. No one's going to help you with your outcome. And to anyone in life, you've got to know your outcome. You've got to know what you want to do in your life. You've got to have a purpose. You've got to have a why.
Yeah.
And I think when you figure out your why, you attract the right people to that. I didn't have a why, so I was kind of like, I wasn't on a purposeful path at that time. I was all over the place. So I met a girl. She wasn't right for me, but she was right at the time. But then she didn't grow with me. So I found myself, and she went a different direction. And I think it's very important in relationships that you have to have things in common. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think you have to have a common interest in career, family, and also like you've got to enjoy doing similar things. You can't have. I don't believe that opposites attract. I think that's bullshit. I think you've got to have things in common, and I think that's a great basis for a really cool relationship, because you can talk about things all day long and you can connect with each other, and it's once you share that thing you love about life, it becomes a joyful thing between two people, and that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do greatly appreciate you sharing your story and your experiences with mental health and what you've done to get through them. So I would just like to thank you for your time, and I do greatly appreciate you coming on today. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for opening me up so much.
I think I'm here to just let everyone have a moment, to tell the world who they are, and this is me, and this is what I've been through, and this is what I've done to make my life where it is now.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is very powerful, Oliver, and I applaud you for doing it,
Oh, thank you.
because not many people are willing. First of all, not many people are willing to share such personal feelings. It's very difficult for people, and not many people are willing to listen like you are, from a completely neutral perspective. And I think it's important, once you get this series out of the way, a lot of people are going to see this and think, shit, that was me. I went through that, and I didn't have anyone to talk to.
And I think this is, becomes another reason of why I do this, so people can watch it and go, I can relate to that. And, I've been in that position. Oh, when he's done that, oh, well, I think I need to do that to get out of this position that I'm in.
Yeah.
So I think, making people realise that there is help out there, and I want people that are coming on the show to share their experiences of getting out of their darkest point, to give other people that help.
Yeah, so you're serving people on a higher level. So that's fantastic, mate. You should be proud of yourself.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I greatly appreciate you coming on. And I hope to see you soon when lockdown's over. Hopefully we can meet up when lockdown's over.
Yep.
And I will get this edited and put out tomorrow, and I can tag you in it. And we'll
Cool.
share the story and positivity.
Thank you, Oliver.
See you soon.